Down on the Farm series here in Kennett Square, Pennsylvania, where we're meeting with Jim Angelucci from the Phillips mushroom farm. Now this guy, I got to tell you, I met with him a little while before to just kind of, see how things were going to go. And I couldn't believe how much he knew about mushrooms. So I'm going to call him the king of all mushrooms, right here, Jim Angelucci. Jim, thank you so much. Yes, thank you so much for having us here.
You're welcome.
Now, the thing that I want to know from you is, you're such a wealth of knowledge as far as this is concerned. What are 2 things or so that you'd like people to know about mushrooms that you're pretty sure they don't know?
One thing is that it was just recently discovered that mushrooms are the only fresh fruit or vegetable that has naturally occurring vitamin D. Mushrooms also have the same compound as the human body that, when exposed to ultraviolet light, increases the vitamin D level as much as 800 times the current RDA. 800
times?
Yes.
Oh my gosh. That's incredible because, so many people are so low in vitamin D these days. Everybody's sitting on the couch, they're not getting outside. And, our vitamin D levels are very, very low. So this would be some way that we could kind of get some more vitamin D into our systems.
In a natural way.
Exactly.
Dr. Hollick, who is the expert at Boston Hospital on vitamin D, has done studies that even people who live in Florida, there's only like 15 minutes in a day where it's optimum for the body to produce vitamin D. Then you have to worry about skin cancer. Mm-hmm. So by eating mushrooms, not only do they taste good, but they're also good for you. Mushrooms are very high in potassium. Actually, one serving has more potassium than a banana. They're a little soggy on cornflakes, though. So they're also rich in thiamine, niacin, selenium, which is an essential mineral for prostate health. And mushrooms, the use of them is limited only by your imagination.
Right. Well, I've learned that over the last couple years preparing mushrooms because I didn't know the first thing about them when I first started. Mm-hmm. And it's amazing. And, Phillips Mushroom produces so many different kinds of mushrooms that you could start and, for a year you wouldn't run out of things to do with them.
Mushrooms are so versatile, and they absorb the flavor that you cook with it, plus they have their own flavor. You look at a portobello. Portobello is a vegetarian's fillet.
Right.
It has so much flavor and texture.
Right.
There's a new concept, and people probably are not aware that the Mushroom Council has come up with a term called swappability, where you swap 1/3 of a protein by using mushrooms. And not only like hamburgers or meatballs or meatloaf or taco meat, it not only decreases the caloric content and the sodium, but it also makes it moister because the mushroom it also blends the flavor.
Mm-hmm. All right, so Jim, the Phillips Mushroom Farm has been here since 1927, correct?
Correct.
So tell me about some of the history of how everything got started and how you guys have innovated some of the changes that have come about in the mushroom industry.
Well, Kennett Square is the self-proclaimed mushroom capital of the world because commercial mushroom cultivation in the United States started here in 1896 when a carnation grower's son saw some wasted space under his carnation beds, decided to do something about it. So he took a steamship to Europe where they were growing mushrooms, brought back the spawn, which is the seed, to grow mushrooms, and started growing mushrooms under his father's carnation beds. Trying to control the environment for 2 completely different crops didn't work, so the first mushroom building was built in the early 1900s here in Kennett, and actually it's still standing and it's on the Register of National Historic Places. At the turn of the century, there were a lot of Italian immigrants that came to work in the stone quarries in Avondale, and when the economy went down the tubes, they did something else, so they started growing mushrooms. Mushrooms don't like heat, so it was basically just during the winter months that mushrooms were grown, and it wasn't until actually Mr. Phillips, the patriarch of the family, was one of the first to use climate control in the late 1930s by just using a large block of ice, blowing a fan across it to try to condition the air and be able to grow mushrooms longer.
Yeah, because there was no refrigeration.
There was no refrigeration. Today, 80% of the mushrooms grown are for the fresh market. With the innovation of climate control and refrigeration, now mushrooms are grown 365, 24/7.
Yeah, I found it kind of funny when I was doing my research that, families at the table weren't really eating mushrooms before the 60s, maybe the early 60s or so. And I thought that was kind of funny. I mean, I grew up eating them, and, I just thought it was strange that wouldn't be part of your vegetable selection when you were maybe growing up in the 50s.
I actually didn't start eating mushrooms until the mid-70s. The industry has changed considerably, and Phillips has been an innovator. Most of the mushrooms grown in the U.S. are the regular white button mushrooms that you see in the supermarket. The brown variety, which are now called cremini, baby bella, and portobello, have been around, but they were usually used for processing. Portobello really didn't come into existence until 1985 when we saw a box of mushrooms on a truck, and it said portobello. We didn't think of it. From what I understand, a lady named Maria Venuti Forest in Philadelphia was bringing them over from Verona, Italy, and they were called capetti, which in Italian means small hat. And when Don Phillips and I looked at it, we said, we can do that. So we put portobello on the market as a commercial item in 1985 and literally gave them away from Maine to Miami.
Huh.
And it wasn't until the chefs started introducing him as a meat substitute that it really started to take off.
Right. When the vegetarians kind of came in and said, hey, this
Exactly.
we can grill this, we can season it, and it can really take the place
Right.
of meat.
The other thing that the Phillips, you mentioned earlier that we grow different varieties. We were the first farm in the U.S. to grow shiitake mushrooms year-round in 1979. We started growing oyster mushrooms in 1982, and then we added in maitake, pom-pom, and we have very strict guidelines that we adhere to as far as good agricultural practices.
Yeah, well, I'm dying to see more about the mushrooms in their actual growing environment. So let's head in, okay?
All right, great.
All right.
Thanks.
All right, Jimmy, ready to go in?
Not yet. Before we go, we have to adhere to our good manufacturing practices, so you're going to have to put on that
Oh, how
Christian
stylish. Yes, how lovely.
And not only that,
Oh,
but
great.
you get to wear a red hairnet.
Ah, well, at least it'll go with my sweater.
Okay, now we're ready to go.
All right, we're going in. Let's go. All right, Jim, so I feel like I just stepped off of a spaceship onto a foreign planet here. What is all this stuff?
Well, these are more of the exotic specialty mushrooms that we
Okay.
grow here at Phillips. As I mentioned earlier, we were the first commercial mushroom farm to put shiitake on the market year-round for the fresh market. That was in 1979. Shiitake is very highly prized for its nutraceutical qualities. It has the ability to protect the liver. There's a compound of the cell wall called lentinin that actually has been extracted, and the Japanese have patented it as an elixir to help protect the liver.
Awesome. Yeah, so there's a lot of nutritive value about this also.
Exactly.
Now, one thing I want to tell everybody, here's the thing. Shiitake mushroom is not spelled S-H-I-T-A-K-E. There's two I's in there, just so you know, and you don't embarrass yourself.
I had someone come in and said, "Do you have any of those shiitakes?" No, we don't. We only have shiitake.
Yeah, I learned the hard way how this mushroom was spelled, and I'll tell you about it later in another segment.
So this is probably one of the most popular of the truly exotic varieties of mushrooms that we grow.
I know that they use it a lot in Chinese medicine.
Chinese medicine, they've been, we're relatively new at this. They've been using this for health for literally thousands of years for
Yeah.
eating shiitake mushrooms.
Well, it's good that we can get them now quickly and affordably.
You can get them every day.
So thank you, Jim.
You're welcome. You're welcome.
So what are we going to talk about this? First of all, let's get this out of the way, okay? Because I'm looking at this and I'm like, get your minds out of the gutter. Tell me about this mushroom here.
This is a species of oyster. The genus, it's called Pleurotus oryngii.
All right.
And
you guys got to see this.
We have trademarked the name Royal Trumpet because it looks like a trumpet. Very, very popular. This is the only mushroom that's actually grown for the stem. The cap is very small. It has a very thick, fibrous membrane. There actually was a restaurant in Kennett Square that took the stem, cut it on a bias, blackened it like scallops, and served it over a mushroom cream sauce. So it was really good.
Yeah, I love these mushrooms especially for cooking because they really hold up to whatever liquid you put them in. And they have such an amazing texture, it totally mimics meat, and you'd never know the difference. And they hold the seasoning really, really well.
The other one, and probably one of the most popular for for its nutraceutical qualities is the maitake.
Yeah, I've
It's
heard a
called
lot about
maitake,
this.
it's called hen of the woods, it's also called dancing mushroom.
Okay.
This actually grows in the wild in Pennsylvania, western Pennsylvania.
I did not know.
One of the fellows that works with me here has family in western Pennsylvania. He brought back newspaper from Somerset County, and there was a guy who found a 60-pound maitake. Had to cut it to put it in the back of his truck.
Yeah, but Jim, you don't want to tell anybody about this because we need to get them from you.
Well,
not
the
from
difference
woods.
is, it's like, you know, that has sand and bugs and everything else in it.
Ah, okay.
Ours are grown, as you can see, in environmentally controlled rooms, so that stuff goes away. Plus, we control the environment. You don't know if a squirrel or a dog passed by the one. It's called dancing mushroom because when people find it in the wild, they dance with joy. It's also called, by researchers, it's called an adaptogen. And the reasoning is it contains beta-glucan and polysaccharides, which are essential in helping to control cancer. Dr. Sun makes an elixir out of, in New York, he makes an elixir out of using maitake mushrooms and other mushrooms to feed to his cancer patients. Unlike shiitake that really targets liver, maitake helps enhance the body's immune system. So it helps the body ward off any kind of attack from in any part of the body, inflammation, cardiovascular disease, things like that. You can also buy this in tablet form as a nutraceutical. The genus and species of this is Grifola frondosa, and if you look on the internet and just search Griffon D, that would be the tablet that you could buy.
The generic name of
The
it.
generic name,
Right.
Griffon D.
Now, when I was here before, you told me a great story about a woman who was undergoing chemotherapy, and she started taking the maitakes, and she had much less side effect, and her cancer wasn't there after they did the
Right.
treatment.
I go out and do a lot of what I call dog and pony shows, and I did one at a retirement community here locally. A lady came in after that and started buying maitake once a week. I went back 2 years later, and I saw a lady sitting in the back of the room, and after I did my spiel about maitake, and there was a question and answer period, the lady raised her hand and said, I was here 2 years ago when you came. I started buying maitake, I took them, I ate them every week. She said, I don't have cancer anymore.
That's amazing. Can you tell me about some organizations that are responsible for doing some research on this type of thing?
There are a lot of, actually, just recently, the Mushroom Council held its first Mushroom and Nutritional Summit in Washington, D.C. at the Mayflower Hotel. It's attended by over 200 researchers and nutritionists to learn all about the beneficial aspects of mushrooms. That was on Monday the 9th and Tuesday the 10th. There will be a video coming out of those proceedings, and if you go to mushroominfo.com, down in the left-hand corner is a little blurb about the Mushroom Summit, so you'll be able to find more information about that.
That's great. So I'll make sure there's a link on my website also to get you to that point.
Great. The other one we have, and this is one of it's a little funny when people write about mushrooms or authors write about it, they use the botanical name because there's so many common names for the same mushroom. This one's called pom-pom. It's also called lion's mane, monkey's head. It's really an interesting mushroom,
Well, it looks like there's a little bunny coming out of there.
and you can see why it's called lion's mane.
And it's so soft.
And the thing about this particular mushroom, it almost looks like cauliflower when you open it up,
Show that.
and it absorbs everything you cook with it. It has a wonderful earthy flavor.
Now, what I've heard about these too is that they're a great way if you want to try to mimic lobster or veal, that you can slice them really thin, put some butter with them, and saute them up, and they really give you that flavor and that essence of the lobster.
And you can they actually have even a more earthy
Yeah.
odor and flavor than just about any other variety.
But
of
it
mushrooms.
almost has like a floral kind of finish to it.
And the great
It's
thing
amazing.
is, it only takes 23 days to grow this, whereas it takes 90 days to grow a maitake, and we get one mushroom, and that's it. So that's why they're more expensive.
Right.
And you're only going to find those in some of the higher-end stores, Whole Foods, Wegmans. You're not usually going to find them in Giant or something, depending on the demographic that
Right.
particular place serves.
That tastes.
Sure.
We can do a lot with this. All right. So, Jim, these are beautiful. Look at this amazing yellow color. Tell me a little bit about this mushroom.
This is an oyster mushroom.
Okay.
It's actually the same genus as the king oyster, it's just a different species.
Okay.
This one happens to be Pleurotus austratus.
Now, when I see these, usually they're gray or brown.
Exactly, because oyster mushrooms come in about 8 different colors. There's brown, gray, yellow, salmon, black. We only grow the brown, the gray, and the yellow.
Okay.
They grow on pasteurized cottonseed hulls. It takes about 8 days for the fruiting bodies to start to form, and then the mushrooms will mature in about 15 days. There's mushrooms are they're nature's marvel. They're the original composters, digesters.
Yeah, and so sustainable. It sounds like everything you do, you take what is once waste and recycle it into something that then you can use on the other
It's
side.
actually the largest organism in the world. There is a place out in western United States where they traced a single mycelium structure to about 37 acres.
Oh my gosh.
So it's not the fruiting
30
body. It's not the fruiting.
Okay.
It's just the mycelial connection.
But theoretically, that could bloom into
It could.
a
Would they have to have a mushroom?
37-acre mushroom.
I think people that saw that would probably be eating the other kind of mushroom.
Aha, I gotcha.
This particular species of mushrooms has the same compound as Lipitor. So it could be a natural statin.
How many of these mushrooms do you think you'd have to eat in order to
Too
get the
many,
same
I
effect?
think.
Too many.
Oysters have sort of the shortest shelf life of any variety that we grow.
Okay.
The best way to store a mushroom when you get it home is to put it into a paper bag and keep it cold. Heat is the biggest culprit for mushroom degradation. So the Canadian mushroom industry has a slogan that's keep it cold and get it sold. So the best thing to do is make sure they get into the refrigerator. They're available every day, so buy what you need, use the whole thing instead of rationing them. Some mushrooms can be frozen, the portobello, cremini, shiitake, but you should blanch those first before you freeze them.
Very good to know. Very good to know. And what I know about these from a chef standpoint is that they are so wonderful to barbecue. You can saute, but they are so good to try to mimic the texture of meat. When you do these, you shred them up and you roast them, and they kind of get a little bit like sticky almost.
Mm-hmm.
You can put a barbecue sauce on there. Tastes just like a beef barbecue. You never know the difference. All right, so we're here in the growing room. Jim, tell me what kind of mushrooms these are.
These are cremini and portobello mushrooms. And actually, they're the same genus and species as the regular white mushrooms. It's just a different strain.
Okay.
And a cremini is an immature mushroom. And by immature, I mean that the veil that covers the gills has not opened. Every portobello starts as a cremini, but not every cremini will become a portobello. The size of a mushroom doesn't determine its maturity. And the unique thing about mushrooms is that they double in size in 24 hours.
That's incredible.
It is. It's food of the gods.
All right, so Jim, here's what I want to know about mushrooms. I had always learned that mushrooms were grown in manure. And every time I'd go to eat them, I got a little skivats. I was like, I got to get this stuff off of here. What is this brown stuff on top of my mushroom? Now, luckily, you told me that isn't true, so I feel much better now. Can you explain that a little bit?
That is correct. They do not grow in manure.
Okay.
They grow in peat moss. Okay. Now, that being said, the substrate or the compost is manure. However, it goes through a temperature profile of at least 185 degrees Fahrenheit, and research has shown that there is absolutely no human pathogens in the compost after it's pasteurized. So everything that we grow mushrooms on has been through a process that actually
Takes away all
takes
that.
away any potential bacteria.
Okay, now you told me before that it's actually chicken scratch that you use mostly for the manure.
That compost that we make is a very specific organic makeup. We need carbohydrate, we need carbon, we need nitrogen. So we use mulch hay, we use straw bedding from racetracks, we use poultry litter for nitrogen, we use corn cobs or whatever available for the carbon. They're all blended together, and it goes through a composting phase where the temperatures will get to about 185 degrees Fahrenheit. It is a living organism in there. That's called a thermophilic microorganism, and that converts the ammonia and nitrogen into protein that the mushroom will use as a food source. So actually the mushroom never comes in contact with the compost.
Okay.
One of the things that we talked about before, if you look here, this is the white mass there is actually the fungus. What we eat is the fruiting body of the fungus, and never the two shall meet. The peat moss is actually the sponge that provides water for the mushroom. So anytime you see a little brown on a mushroom or a mushroom stem, it's peat moss.
All right, good to know. Very good
Unless
to
you
know.
need a high fiber diet, you can clean it off.
The thing that I thought was interesting about this whole thing, the most important thing about vegetarians is that you want to try to do anything to keep away from supporting a factory farm kind of situation. Now, what I understand that you guys do is you actually take the chicken scratch and some of the overflow from factory farms and use them in this industry. And that acts as sort of like a cleanup, that if you didn't do that, all that waste would just sort of be out in the world.
Exactly. The mushroom industry is probably the country's biggest recycler of agricultural byproducts. We buy enough poultry litter just in Kennett Square alone that if we didn't, it would pollute the entire Chesapeake Bay. What would happen at racetracks for stable bedding and horse farms if they had to dispose of their stable bedding in a landfill? We take all of that material, we combine it into a very rich substrate that produces Pennsylvania's #1 vegetable cash crop. And after the crop, what's left over is a natural resource that helps amend the soil. It's been shown to remediate different types of petrochemicals, and it's also used to clarify abandoned strip mines, to get the acid water that comes out of strip mines, to neutralize it. So it's so beneficial. If you use, matter of fact, it's too good. Research at Penn State showed that one application of spent mushroom substrate on a cornfield increased production 10% for 6 years.
Amazing, amazing. So I'm so glad to hear that, because it's one way that we can take something that would normally be a terrible, terrible waste situation and recycle it back into something that's good. So Jim, tell me where we are now. Look at this amazing place.
This is our retail store. It's called the Woodlands at Phillips. It was the owner's aunt, and back in the 60s she had an antique shop that was called the Woodlands. So we sell all of our products here, plus anything that has a mushroom on it or in it or looks like a mushroom is sold here. This is the second generation of what we used to have. It was called the Mushroom Museum out here along the garden. We closed that in 2001. So the owner's daughters and daughter-in-law decided that we needed to showcase mushrooms, especially Phillips mushrooms. So go to the website, thewoodlands@phillips.com, order mushrooms on the website. If you're local, you can actually pre-order and have it ready when it's picked up.